All right, mission accomplished. I have some Andy Ratto Jewish blood. I was trying to poke and stab myself, and it wasn't working very well. I always like to say that I have a high tolerance for pain because I've had bone marrow extracted multiple times, which is very, very painful. But when it comes to inflicting pain upon myself, I'm not very good at it, I've now learned. So what I eventually had to do was do a particularly aggressive job of flossing my teeth until they started bleeding. And then I spit some gum out, spit some blood out on the plate. And now I'm mixing it in. So, on the little placard it will say Star of David, 16, 17, whatever, Bleeding Star, Andy Ratto, May 2007, I don't know what month it is, it's probably May by now. Materials, canvas, oil paint, acrylic paint, water, Jewish blood. Just so people are clear, kind of the emphasis for this specific piece of artwork. And I mean, one of my concerns is that, you know, a loss of, a lack of killing in the West Bank and a freedom of movement, and, you know, you can kind of have this idea that, like, oh, well, if we can only treat the Palestinians well enough, you know, good enough, then, you know, then we're okay, then we're freed of any kind of moral concern and obligation. And it really seems to me like, you know, even a wall is not a good thing. And you can say, like, maybe it's absolutely necessary based on the circumstances, but like, I feel like a wall is really antithetical to my idea of Judaism, because it doesn't allow the sort of relationships to develop between the Jews and the people that live nearby here and around here. And I think those are important relationships, and I think they're beneficial for both people on both sides of the wall. And excuse me, I need more paint. So I think, you know, any circumstance in which a wall is necessary is a bad circumstance. And I think the wall causes problems. Not to say it doesn't have benefits. I realize the wall has benefits, and that, you know, if you want to consider what the other possible ways to deal with the situation are, in some ways, you know, in some metrics, the wall is better than the alternatives. And in some other ways, the wall is not as good. Anyway, I think we should be just as cognizant of not only the impact that the wall is having on the Palestinians who live on the other side, but that the wall is having on us. And we should not only be cognizant of the impact that the Gaza war is having on the people who live in Gaza, but that the impact it's having on the people who live in Israel. And I think it's easy to lose sight of the impact that it's having on us. Us meaning the Israelis. I don't normally use us to mean the Israelis. I guess I kind of slipped back into that while I was on Encounter. And it was something that happened right when I first got to Israel. I started using us, we, in terms of Israel. And I've basically stopped doing that because I've made plans to leave and go elsewhere. And I don't particularly feel like an Israeli at the moment. Anyway, so I don't actually normally talk a lot about the meaning behind the artwork that I do, because I like people to be able to find their own meanings, and I like people to be able to not be constrained by what I tell them this artwork means. So I might not even put this online. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll put it up, but I'll just have it private because I don't think anyone particularly needs to see this video to understand the artwork and to get something out of it. I don't want to make this a little bit more drippy before I tilt it up, and hopefully it's going to run all the way through that lower Israel Jewish Star neighborhood, and then a little bit down onto the canvas. So yeah, I think Israel, Jew Star, Judaism is bleeding. Not like as much, more so, less than in the Palestinians. And we talked about kind of the error and the problemness, problemimity of trying to compare and contrast and rank suffering, which sometimes people like to do. Humorously, one of the activists, oh no, that just dripped a lot more than I wanted it to. Oops. One of the Palestinian activists in the West Bank, that another group of people on the trip met with, I didn't meet with this person, apparently on her vacations and her free time, whenever she has free time, she goes to Darfur and tries to help out in Darfur because she couldn't stay in the West Bank year round. It would be too hard for her. I'm like, really? Vacation in Darfur? That's wacky. This, by the way, is going to take forever to dry. Forever to dry. Alright, I think I'm done. I'm not really sure what else to do with this. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's what I was going for. I'm gonna try and give this as a present. There's this whole backstory. Someone spoke recently at Pardes, and I asked them a question that prefaced the notion that there was such a thing as Jewish values, which was probably a pretty bad preface to take in terms of the question, because it's confusing, and it certainly wasn't clear to me what I meant by Jewish values, and it didn't necessarily even clear to him either. So he got a little sidetracked first, and I looked at that for a second. I thought I was bleeding really hard, but I realized no, I didn't get blood from my thumb. It's red paint. So anyway, he began his question by first responding to the notion of what Jewish values might be, and he said, well, is there such a thing as Jewish art? And are Jewish values because a Jewish person has them as values? And is art Jewish art because a Jewish person made it? Not all art made by a Jewish person is Jewish art, and not everyone trying to make art is actually making art, or not everything that's intended to be art is art. Is basically what he said. And all the people who were there watching him speak, who knew me from Pardes, thought this was hilarious, as did I, because I make what is ostensibly Jewish artwork and put it up in the building. He didn't know this, but we all had a big laugh about it. So I decided to make him a piece of artwork, and his latest book is about Israel, so I wanted to do something Israel-themed. And he probably has a more conservative view than I do of the situation. So I wanted to make specifically this piece for him. And I'm going to see him on Thursday, and I'm going to give it to him. Hopefully he wants it. Maybe he doesn't want it. If not, I'll keep it. But yeah, it was a nice coming together of my encounter experience that helped me get a sense of the right kavanah to make this piece of artwork, and then having someone to give it to as well. So, all done.